The gleaming International Space Station hung silently against Earth's blue backdrop. Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at attention, his decorated uniform pristine as he awaited humanity's first official contact with an alien civilization. The air inside the station felt electric with anticipation, a mixture of excitement and nervousness permeating the recycled atmosphere. The Zeraxian ship had appeared 3 weeks ago, broadcasting peaceful intentions in perfect English. Their technology was clearly advanced, their vessel sleek and otherworldly, seemingly breaking several laws of physics that Earth scientists held dear. The global community had scrambled to prepare for this historic moment, selecting their finest diplomats and leaders to represent humanity. Admiral Kim watched the docking procedure through the observation window, his hands clasped behind his back. Commander Lee Jinwoo stood beside him, younger but equally focused on the approaching alien vessel. Neither man spoke, but both felt the weight of history on their shoulders. "Docking sequence complete," announced the station's eye. "Pressure equalization in progress." The first sight of the Zeraxians took everyone's breath away. They stood nearly 8 feet tall, their bodies covered in an iridescent exoskeleton that shifted colors in the station's lighting. Their movements were precise and graceful despite their imposing size. The delegation consisted of 5 aliens, each wearing what appeared to be ceremonial garments that shimmered with embedded technology. "Welcome to Earth's International Space Station," Admiral Kim said, stepping forward with an outstretched hand, a gesture that had been debated extensively by Earth's diplomatic corps. The lead Zeraxian tilted its head, multiple compound eyes reflecting the station's lights. When it spoke, its voice was melodious and clear. "We thank you for this welcome, Admiral Kim Tae-ho. We bring greetings from the Zeraxian Collective." The initial exchanges went smoothly. The aliens demonstrated perfect knowledge of human customs and language, asking thoughtful questions about Earth's culture and sharing carefully measured information about their own civilization. Admiral Kim noted how they always moved in perfect synchronization, their gestures almost choreographed. Commander Lee was the first to notice something was wrong. During the 3rd hour of discussions, he saw one of the Zeraxians make an odd movement near its ceremonial garments. Years of military training had honed his instincts. "Admiral," he started to say, but it was already too late. The Zeraxians moved as one, their diplomatic facades literally shattering as their exoskeletons shifted and weaponry emerged from within their bodies. The lead alien's peaceful expression transformed into something predatory, mandibles extending from what had appeared to be a humanoid face. Such predictable creatures. The alien's voice had changed, becoming harsh and metallic. "You behaved exactly as expected, gathering your leaders in one location, trusting our peaceful overtures." Admiral Kim reached for his ceremonial sidearm, but a Zeraxian was already there, moving with impossible speed. The alien's clawed hand crushed his wrist before he could draw the weapon. Around him, chaos erupted as the other aliens attacked the Earth delegation. Commander Lee reacted instantly, diving behind a console as energy weapons began firing. He watched in horror as diplomats and leaders were cut down methodically. The Zeraxians moved with terrifying efficiency, their attacks coordinated perfectly as if controlled by a single mind. "This is how it always begins," one of the aliens announced, its voice filled with cold amusement. "Your species will join the others we have harvested. Resistance is merely a formality." Lee managed to reach the emergency communications console while Admiral Kim, despite his injured wrist, attempted to organize a defense with the station's security team. But against the Zeraxians' superior technology and strength, they were hopelessly outmatched. "Earth Command, this is Commander Lee Jinwoo," he transmitted, ducking as an energy blast melted the wall above him. "The Zeraxians are hostile. I repeat, first contact is hostile." There, an explosion rocked the station, cutting off his transmission. Admiral Kim fought his way to the emergency pods, gathering as many survivors as he could. "Commander, to me," he shouted over the chaos. Lee sprinted across the chamber, helping a wounded diplomat as he went. The Ziraxians seemed to take pleasure in the humans' desperate resistance. They moved with predatory grace, herding survivors away from escape routes, playing with their prey before striking lethal blows. Just before reaching the escape pod, Admiral Kim turned back. "Go," he ordered Lee. "Earth needs to know what happened here." "That's an order, Commander." Lee wanted to argue, but the Admiral's expression stopped him. He helped the remaining survivors into the pod as Kim provided covering fire with a weapon he'd taken from a fallen security officer. The last thing Commander Lee saw before the escape pod launched was Admiral Kim standing his ground against 3 Ziraxians, buying precious seconds with his life. The pod ejected into space just as explosions began consuming the station. Looking back through the pod's window, Lee watched the International Space Station break apart. The Ziraxian ship was already moving away, its mission accomplished. He knew with grim certainty that this was only the beginning. As the emergency pod headed toward Earth, carrying its precious cargo of survivors and warning, Commander Lee thought about the Admiral's sacrifice. He activated the pod's communication system, preparing to deliver the message that would change human history forever. Humanity had just been thrust into a war they never wanted, against an enemy that had done this countless times before. The Ziraxians had made their declaration of war in the most brutal way possible, but they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed humans would respond like all the other species they had encountered. They would soon learn that humanity was anything but predictable. In the depths of the secure underground facility, beneath the ruins of Seoul, Dr. Park Mireille hunched over her microscope. Her lab coat was stained with the silvery fluid that served as Ziraxian blood, and dark circles under her eyes betrayed countless sleepless nights. The specimen before her was a fragment of alien neural tissue, recovered at great cost from a battlefield in what used to be Thailand. The lab around her hummed with activity, even at this late hour. Teams of scientists worked around the clock, knowing that understanding their enemy might be humanity's only hope for survival. 3 months had passed since the massacre on the International Space Station, and the Ziraxians had already destroyed several major cities. "Dr. Park, you need to see this," called Dr. Kang Do-hyun from his workstation. His normally neat appearance was disheveled, his hair sticking up from running his hands through it too many times. He pointed to his monitor, where complex neural scanning data scrolled past. Mireille moved to his side, her eyes widening as she processed what she was seeing. "Run it again," she ordered, leaning closer. The pattern repeated, a complex wave of electrical activity that seemed impossibly organized. "It's the same in every specimen we've examined," Do-hyun explained, pulling up multiple datasets. "No matter which Ziraxian the tissue came from, the basic neural architecture is identical. Not similar, identical." Mireille's tired mind raced with implications. She hurried back to her own workstation, pulling up records from the first contact incident. "Look at this," she called to Do-hyun. Commander Lee's report mentioned how they moved in perfect synchronization. "We thought it was training. But it's biological," Do-hyun finished her thought. "They're connected somehow." The 2 scientists worked through the night, fueled by coffee and the urgency of their discovery. They compared tissue samples, battle footage, and survivor accounts. Every piece of evidence supported their theory. At dawn, Mireille sat back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. "It's not just a connection," she said. "It's a complete hive mind structure. Each Ziraxian is like a cell in a larger organism. They share thoughts, memories, experiences, everything. That explains their perfect coordination in battle," Do-hyun added, "but it might also be their weakness." He pulled up footage from several battles. "Look here, whenever our forces do something unexpected, there's a slight delay in their response. It's like they all have to agree on how to react." Mireille finished. She quickly accessed reports from other scientific teams around the world. The Ziraxians have conquered hundreds of civilizations, but they all mention the same thing. The aliens' tactics never change. They're perfectly executed, but predictable, Do-hyun said. They expect logical responses because that's how their hive mind works. Every action is calculated, optimized. Myray opened a file containing records recovered from a destroyed alien ship. Look at these civilizations they conquered. Each one fought back with conventional military tactics, organized armies, strategic retreats, logical deployments of forces. And each one fell. But humans, Du Hyun trailed off, thinking about recent battles where human forces had achieved small victories. We don't always fight logically. We get angry, scared, desperate. We make emotional decisions. Myray nodded excitedly. The guerrilla tactics in Malaysia, the suicide charge in Berlin that shouldn't have worked but did, the civilian fishing boats that somehow took down a Xeraxian destroyer in the Pacific, none of these actions made tactical sense. They spent the next few hours documenting their findings. The Xeraxians' hive mind gave them incredible advantages. Perfect coordination, shared knowledge, unified purpose. But it also meant they thought as one, expected their enemies to think as they did, to respond with pure logic. Humans are messy, Myray said as she prepared their report for military command. We feel fear, rage, hope. We make choices based on gut feelings. We break formation to save a fallen friend. We sacrifice logical advantages for emotional reasons. And that confuses them, Du Hyun added. Their neural pattern analysis can't predict irrational behavior. It's like trying to play chess against someone who sometimes moves pieces randomly. As they finished their report, an alert sounded throughout the facility. Another Xeraxian attack was underway, this time targeting survivors in former Japan. But now they had something new to add to humanity's defense: understanding. Myray transmitted their findings to military command, her hands shaking with exhaustion and excitement. The key isn't to outthink them, she said to Du Hyun. It's to be unpredictable, to embrace what makes us human, our emotions, our irrationality, our ability to make choices that defy logic. As they watched troops deploy to meet the new threat, both scientists felt a glimmer of hope. The Xeraxians had never failed to conquer a civilization before, but they had never faced humans before either. Their perfect, logical hive mind was about to confront humanity's greatest strength, their beautiful, chaotic individuality. Send everything we have to the other research stations, Myray ordered, and get me contact with military command. If we're going to win this war, we need to start fighting like humans, not like the logical, predictable enemy they expect us to be. General Choi Hyun-ki stood in the rain, watching the Xeraxian ships descend through Earth's storm-filled skies. Their formation was perfect, as always, a diamond pattern that had spelled doom for countless civilizations before. But today, something was different. Today, they faced humanity's desperate creativity. All units, maintain radio silence, he whispered into his encrypted communicator. Around him, hidden in the muddy trenches and dense forest of what was once northern Vietnam, his forces waited. They weren't a traditional army. Farmers with hunting rifles fought alongside soldiers. Teenage hackers worked with veteran warriors. The Xeraxian ships landed exactly where his team had predicted, their precise mathematical calculations making them ironically predictable. As their troops deployed in textbook formation, Hyun-ki smiled grimly. They never considered why this valley, previously ignored, had suddenly shown signs of human activity. Captain Song Jae-hyun's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Thunder Squadron in position, sir. The storm is perfect." Her fighter jets, hidden in the clouds above, had been modified to work with the natural lightning in the storm. It was a crazy idea that had come from a junior engineer, the kind of unpredictable thinking that confused the alien hive mind. The Xeraxians moved forward in perfect lines, their weapons ready for a conventional human defense that wasn't there. Instead, they found empty trenches filled with rainwater. Their sensors detected no significant human presence, exactly as planned. "Now," Hyun-ki ordered softly. The valley erupted in chaos. The mud beneath the aliens' feet, saturated with a special compound developed by desperate scientists, suddenly became like quicksand. As the Ziraxians struggled to maintain their formation, Song's squadron struck from above. The fighters dove from the clouds, their modified systems attracting and channeling the storm's lightning. Bolts of electricity struck the aliens' advanced shields in ways their defensive algorithms never anticipated. No species had ever used a planet's weather as a weapon against them. Their formation is breaking, Song reported, her squadron weaving through the lightning. They can't maintain their unity in these conditions. Hyun-Ki gave the signal for the second phase. From hidden positions in the hills, civilians and soldiers emerged with an array of weapons that would have made any traditional military commander laugh. Modified farming equipment, improvised explosives, even ancient traps redesigned for alien anatomy. The Ziraxians tried to adapt, but their hive minds struggled with the sheer chaos of the human attack. Their perfect formations, designed to counter logical military responses, meant nothing against farmers throwing homemade chemical bombs that stuck to their exoskeletons. Keep the pressure on, Hyun-Ki ordered. Don't give them time to think. He led a charge from his position, his troops moving in seemingly random patterns that had been carefully planned to appear completely irrational to the alien mind. Above, Song's squadron continued their thunderstorm gambit. Her pilots flew maneuvers that broke every rule of aerial combat, their movements synchronized with the storm itself. The lightning is disrupting their ship-to-ground communications, she reported. They can't coordinate. The Ziraxian forces began to show signs of confusion. Their usual perfect coordination faltered as they faced attacks from every direction, none following any logical pattern they could predict. A group of teenagers using modified gaming controllers sent small drones darting between their ranks, delivering localized EMP bursts that confused their sensors. They're trying to retreat to their ships, someone shouted. But Song's squadron had turned the valley's sky into a deadly web of lightning and chaos. Two Ziraxian ships crashed trying to take off, their pilots unable to compute safe trajectories through the electronically charged storm. Hyun-Ki watched as the alien forces broke completely. For the first time in recorded history, a Ziraxian invasion force was in full retreat. Their remaining ships lifted off in a panicked rush, abandoning their ground troops. The perfect harmony of their hive mind had become a liability, spreading confusion and fear through their entire force at once. Pursue but don't engage directly, he ordered Song's squadron. Let them retreat with the knowledge of their defeat. He knew the psychological impact would ripple through their entire collective consciousness. As the last alien ship disappeared into the clouds, Captain Song landed her fighter near Hyun-Ki's position. She climbed out, soaked from the rain but grinning. Their predictability was their weakness, she said. They never expected us to use weather as a weapon. Hyun-Ki nodded, watching his unusual army emerge from their positions, soldiers and civilians together, using everything from military weapons to repurposed farm tools. This is why we'll win, he said. Not because we're stronger or more advanced, but because we're willing to try the impossible. The victory spread hope across the globe. The invincible Ziraxians had been defeated not by superior technology or military might, but by human unpredictability. Their perfect hive mind couldn't compute the chaos of human warfare, where farmers fought alongside soldiers and storms became weapons. As Hyun-Ki began planning his next impossible strategy, he knew this was just the beginning. The Ziraxians would return, but they would find that every human defeat only led to more creative, more unpredictable responses. Humanity's greatest weakness, their chaotic, emotional nature, had become their greatest strength against an enemy that only understood logic and order. Ambassador Han Su-min peered through the viewport of her small exploration vessel as it approached the dark side of Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon. Her ship's sensors had detected faint energy signatures here, carefully hidden from casual observation. After humanity's first victories against the Ziraxians, they had begun receiving encrypted messages from deep space, desperate calls for help from others who had faced the same enemy. The surface of Europa cracked open like a massive door, revealing a hidden base beneath the ice. As her ship descended into the underground hangar, Su-min saw structures that clearly weren't human in origin. The architecture was alien, but it carried the unmistakable mark of beings in hiding. "We welcome you, Ambassador Han," a voice transmitted in carefully practiced human language. "We have waited long to find others who could stand against them." When she stepped out of her ship, Su-min found herself facing representatives of 3 different species. The Aetheri were tall, graceful beings of almost transparent flesh. The Mirth were shorter, their bodies covered in iridescent scales. The Krell looked almost mechanical, though she would learn they were biological beings with silicon-based bodies. "We are the last of our kinds," the Aetheri representative explained. "The Ziraxians destroyed our worlds, but small groups of us escaped. We have hidden here for what you would call centuries, watching, waiting." Colonel Yoon Ta-sung, who had accompanied the ambassador as military advisor, studied their visitors with keen interest. "How many others are hiding like you?" he asked. "More than you can imagine," the Mirth leader answered. "The galaxy is full of survivors, hidden in places the Ziraxians wouldn't think to look. We have watched your species fight them. You do things differently." Over the next few days, Su-min and Taesung learned the full extent of the Ziraxians' campaign of extinction. Hundreds of civilizations had fallen, each one fighting exactly as the hive mind expected. But humans had done the impossible. They had driven back the invaders. "We need to unite," Su-min declared during a meeting with the refugee leaders. "Earth can be more than a hiding place. It can be a foundation for resistance." Colonel Yoon outlined his plan for an interspecies military academy. "Each of your species has unique abilities," he explained. "Combined with human unconventional tactics, we could create something the Ziraxians have never faced, an unpredictable, unified force." The first academy was established in the mountains of what used to be South Korea. Yoon watched with pride as human instructors taught their alien allies the art of guerrilla warfare, while learning from their new friends' advanced technology and unique capabilities. The Aetheri, with their natural ability to bend light, excelled at stealth operations, but had never considered using this ability offensively. The Mirth's understanding of biotechnology helped improve human weapons. The Krell's silicon-based minds could interface directly with machines, creating hybrid systems that even the Ziraxian hive mind couldn't predict. "The key is controlled chaos," Yoon explained to his first class of mixed-species cadets. "The Ziraxians expect perfect order, even from their enemies. We'll give them perfect chaos instead." Training sessions often looked more like improvisational dance than military drills. Humans taught their allies to break formation, to trust instincts over logic, to embrace unpredictability as a tactical advantage. In return, they learned new technologies and abilities that had been hidden from the galaxy for generations. Ambassador Han traveled to more hidden refuges, bringing hope to species that had known only fear for centuries. Earth's atmosphere was compatible with most forms of life, and soon the planet became home to survivors from dozens of civilizations. "We never imagined fighting back was possible," a young Aetheri told Su-min during a training exercise. "We thought survival was the best we could hope for. But humans showed us that the impossible is possible." Colonel Yoon developed new combat doctrines that combined human unpredictability with alien capabilities. Aetheri light-bending powers merged with human guerrilla tactics. Mirth biotechnology enhanced human weapons in ways that confused Ziraxian sensors. Krell technical skills created battlefield chaos that even the hive mind couldn't process. "The Ziraxians believe they know everything about warfare," Yoon told his troops. "But they've never seen anything like us. We're not just random species hiding in the dark anymore. We're a family, and family fights differently." The first joint operation proved his words true. A small fleet of Ziraxian ships, hunting for refugee bases, encountered what seemed to be a helpless human convoy. Instead, they found themselves facing a coordinated attack that broke every rule of space combat they knew. Aetheri ships appeared from nowhere, using their light-bending abilities in ways their species had never conceived before learning human tactics. Mirth Biotech confused the hive mind sensors with impossible readings. Krell Systems introduced chaos into the Ziraxians' perfect formations, and human pilots flew patterns that no logical mind could predict. As news of the victory spread through hidden refugee communities, more survivors emerged from hiding. Earth's Academy grew, each new species adding their unique abilities to humanity's unconventional strategies. "We're no longer prey hiding from hunters," Ambassador Han told a gathering of coalition leaders. "We're becoming something new, something the Ziraxians never planned for." Colonel Yoon watched his mixed species forces train together, seeing how they adapted and grew stronger. What had started as desperate refugees learning human warfare had become a true coalition, with each species contributing their strengths to create something unprecedented. The galaxy was changing. In hidden places, word spread of a planet where the hunted had become warriors, where the impossible had become possible. Earth was no longer just humanity's home. It had become hope for countless species who had only known defeat and hiding. The Ziraxians would soon learn that their perfect hive mind would face not just human unpredictability, but the combined chaos of a galaxy that had finally found the courage to fight back. Professor Kim Da-hai stared at the neural scan, results floating in the holographic display. The human brain patterns danced before her eyes, a beautiful chaos of colors and connections that seemed to follow no logical pattern. Beside it, the Ziraxian neural map showed perfect symmetry and order, beautiful in its way, but utterly predictable. "This is why they can't understand us," she explained to Lieutenant Bak Minho, who had come to her lab seeking answers. "Look at these emotional spikes in our decision-making centers, where they process everything through pure logic. We're literally incapable of doing that." Minho studied the scans, his military mind translating the scientific data into tactical implications. "So when we make decisions based on gut feelings, their hive mind can't predict it," Da-hai finished. "They're like a supercomputer trying to play chess against someone who sometimes moves pieces for purely emotional reasons. Their perfect logic becomes a weakness." The lieutenant's eyes lit up with understanding. His unit was preparing to defend New Seoul, one of humanity's last major cities. The Ziraxians had begun their final push, determined to end the resistance that had frustrated them for so long. "Show me more," he said, pulling up a chair. Da-hai spent hours explaining her findings, how human brains formed connections that seemed random to the Ziraxian hive mind, how emotions like fear, love, and anger created decision patterns that defied logical analysis, how even human mistakes and illogical choices became advantages against an enemy that couldn't comprehend imperfection. 3 days later, Minho put this knowledge to use. As Ziraxian ships appeared over New Seoul, his forces were ready, but not in any way the aliens could have expected. "All units, execute Operation Madness," he ordered. His troops had thought he was crazy when he explained the plan. It went against every military doctrine they'd ever learned. But that was exactly the point. Civilian vehicles modified with military weapons zigzagged through the streets. Soldiers switched positions randomly, following patterns based on lottery numbers rather than tactical advantage. Construction equipment repurposed as weapons moved through the city's underground tunnels, emerging at seemingly random points to attack. The Ziraxian forces descended in their usual perfect formation, expecting to find human defenders behaving according to logical military doctrine. Instead, they found chaos. "They're trying to analyze our pattern," Da-hai said, watching from the command center. She had insisted on being present, monitoring both human and alien neural activities. "But there is no pattern. We're fighting on pure instinct and emotion." Minho's troops had been told to trust their gut feelings, to make decisions based on intuition rather than training. When a squad leader felt nervous about a position, they moved, just before Ziraxian forces struck that location. When a gunner had a hunch about where enemies might appear, they fired, hitting ships that should have been impossible to predict. "Their hive mind is showing signs of stress," Da-hai reported, studying her readings. They're trying to find logic in our movements, but there isn't any. It's overwhelming their ability to process and respond. The battle for New Seoul became a testament to human unpredictability. Minho's forces used construction sites as ambush points, led enemies into shopping malls turned into mazes, and used the city's subway system in ways that defied conventional military strategy. "Sir, should we fall back to defensive position beta?" a young officer asked when Ziraxian forces threatened their flank. "What does your gut tell you?" Minho asked instead of giving an order. The officer paused, then smiled. "My sister used to work in that department store. I know a way through the loading docks that would let us hit them from behind." "Do it," Minho ordered, watching as another seemingly illogical decision threw the enemy into confusion. Dahai's monitors showed the Ziraxian neural patterns becoming increasingly erratic. Their perfect coordination began to break down as they faced decisions and movements their collective consciousness couldn't categorize or predict. "They're actually starting to malfunction," she said with excitement. "Their hive mind is designed to process and respond to logical input. This much chaos is like static in their system." The tide turned as more human forces embraced their natural unpredictability. Soldiers made choices based on childhood memories of the city, emotional attachments to certain locations, or simply because it felt right. Each illogical decision added to the Ziraxians' confusion. "They're retreating," Minho announced as the alien ships began to pull back. The most powerful hive mind in the galaxy, defeated by human instinct and emotion. Dahai's research had revealed humanity's greatest strength, their beautiful, chaotic minds that could never be fully predicted or controlled. The very things the Ziraxians saw as weaknesses, emotion, instinct, illogical choices, had become weapons more powerful than any advanced technology. As the sun set over New Seoul, still standing despite everything, Minho visited Dahai's lab one more time. She was already analyzing data from the battle, adding to her understanding of how human unpredictability could be used against the alien hive mind. "We're not just fighting with weapons anymore," she told him. "We're fighting with what makes us human. Our emotions, our instincts, our ability to make choices that defy logic, but somehow turn out right." Minho nodded, understanding now that humanity's greatest edge wasn't in their technology or their tactics, but in their minds. Beautifully chaotic, eternally unpredictable, and utterly incomprehensible to an enemy that only understood perfect order. The defense of New Seoul became a model for future battles, teaching human forces to embrace their chaotic nature rather than fight against it. In the war against an enemy that expected perfect logic, humanity's greatest weapon turned out to be their ability to be perfectly illogical. Fleet Admiral Ryu Jaehwa stood on the bridge of the Earth Coalition flagship, Thunderchild, watching as thousands of ships gathered in formation around Jupiter. It was the largest fleet ever assembled. Human vessels alongside ships from dozens of formerly hidden species, all united for the first major offensive against the Ziraxian Empire. "Operation Shattered Mirror begins in 30 minutes, she announced across the fleet-wide channel. "Remember, there is no wrong way to fight today. Trust your instincts. Embrace the chaos." Major Nam Heejin's ground forces were already loaded in their dropships, ready to launch as soon as the fleet broke through. His troops carried a mix of human and alien weapons, each soldier encouraged to use whatever felt right in the moment, rather than following standard protocols. "All ships, prepare for jump," Admiral Ryu ordered. The fleet's formation was deliberately irregular. Some ships clustered too close, others spaced too far apart by conventional military standards. It was exactly the kind of pattern that would confuse the Ziraxian hive mind. The jump to Ziraxian space was synchronized to Earth music, another touch that made no tactical sense but added to the unpredictability of their movements. They emerged above the first target world to find the enemy fleet arranged in their usual perfect geometric patterns. "Begin the dance," Ryu commanded, using the code phrase that meant every ship captain should follow their own instincts rather than any preset battle plan. The space battle that followed defied every rule of conventional warfare. Human ships spun and weaved in patterns based on everything from ballet movements to street dancing. Alien vessels that had once hidden from the Ziraxians now attacked with centuries of pent-up fury. Their tactics merged with human chaos theory. "They're trying to predict our movements," Rue's tactical officer reported with a grin. "Their formations are starting to break up." Major Nam watched from his dropship as the Ziraxian fleet's perfect coordination began to falter. Ships designed to fight in precise formations found themselves facing opponents that moved like leaves in a storm. The hive mind controlling them couldn't process the seemingly random attacks coming from all directions. Ground forces, launch, reordered as the first gaps appeared in the enemy's defenses. Show them how humans fight on solid ground. Nam's troops descended toward the Ziraxian world below, their drop patterns intentionally scattered and irregular. Each unit had been trained to fight independently, to make decisions based on instinct rather than rigid tactical doctrine. "Remember what we learned," Nam told his forces as they approached the surface. "They expect us to fight like soldiers. Fight like humans instead." The ground battle erupted into beautiful chaos. Human troops used urban warfare tactics in open fields and open field tactics in urban areas. Some units advanced while singing old folk songs, the unexpected sound patterns disrupting the Ziraxians' sensor systems. Others moved in patterns based on children's games. "Sir, Third Company is attacking the main fortress using dance moves from old music videos," a lieutenant reported to Nam. "Are they being effective?" he asked. "The enemy can't predict their movements. They've already breached the outer defenses." Above the planet, Admiral Rue's fleet continued its erratic assault. Ships performed maneuvers that looked like mistakes, but were deliberately crafted to confuse the enemy's targeting systems. The Ziraxian fleet's responses became increasingly disorganized as their hive minds struggled to process the chaos surrounding them. "Their coordination is breaking down completely," Rue's science officer reported. "The hive mind can't maintain control when it can't predict what's happening." On the surface, Nam's forces pushed deeper into Ziraxian territory. Each soldier had been encouraged to modify their weapons and tactics in unique ways. Some had painted their armor with family symbols. Others had modified their rifles to play music when fired. Every unpredictable element added to the enemy's confusion. "The fortress is ours," Nam announced several hours later. "And Command won't believe how we took it." The final assault had involved troops riding captured alien vehicles while singing karaoke, their apparently random movements making them impossible to target effectively. The Ziraxian defenders, trying to find logic in the assault, had been overwhelmed by its sheer absurdity. Admiral Ryu received the ground victory report with satisfaction. Above the planet, the enemy fleet was in full retreat, their once perfect formations now scattered and broken. The hive mind controlling them had encountered something it could never adapt to: pure human chaos. "One world down," she broadcast to the coalition fleet. "And we've shown them something they've never seen before: how humanity really fights." The victory was more than military. They had proven that the Ziraxians' greatest strength, their perfect unity and logic, could become their greatest weakness when faced with opponents who embraced unpredictability and emotion. As the coalition forces secured their first captured Ziraxian world, Nam walked through the enemy fortress, now filled with human troops still singing victory songs. The walls were covered in perfectly geometric patterns, everything arranged with mathematical precision. "Until today, we bring chaos to their order," he said to his troops, "and they have no defense against it." Admiral Ryu looked at the tactical display showing dozens more Ziraxian worlds within reach. Each one would face the same overwhelming chaos, each battle fought with human unpredictability, backed by the combined strength of all the species who had once hidden from these enemies. "Prepare for the next target," she ordered. "And remember, the more unpredictable we are, the stronger we become." The coalition fleet regrouped, again forming patterns that defied military logic. They had proved that humanity's gift for chaos could overcome even the most perfectly ordered enemy. The war was far from over, but they had shown the galaxy that sometimes the best way to fight was to break every rule of fighting. The Xeraxian Empire was about to learn that their perfect order was no match for humanity's perfect chaos. Hawker Lee Minseo's hands moved steadily over the neural disruptor's controls despite her exhaustion. The device, larger than a house and humming with combined human and alien technology, represented humanity's greatest achievement, and perhaps their last hope. Around her, the Coalition's combined fleet faced off against the largest Xeraxian force ever assembled above their homeworld. General Oh Jun-ho watched from his command ship as the enemy's perfect formation spread across space like a geometric web. The Xeraxian homeworld below was a monument to order, every city a perfect circle, every building mathematically precise. It was beautiful in its way, but cold and lifeless. All forces in position. Jun-ho reported to Admiral Kim Tae-ho, who had come from Earth to witness this final battle. The Admiral had never forgotten the massacre he'd survived during first contact. Now, years later, he would see either humanity's greatest victory or their final defeat. Dr. Lee, status of the neural disruptor? Kim asked over the secure channel. Final calibrations complete. Min Seo responded. The device is ready. But remember, this isn't a weapon of destruction. It's a tool of change. The neural disruptor had been built using everything they'd learned about the Xeraxian hive mind. It would broadcast human neural patterns across their entire network, forcing them to experience individual thought and emotion for the first time in their history. Begin the attack, Admiral Kim ordered. Show them everything humanity can be. The battle erupted with controlled chaos. Coalition ships moved in patterns based on Earth's greatest dances, pieces of music, and even children's games. Every movement was unpredictable yet purposeful, designed to confuse and distract the Xeraxian fleet while protecting Min Seo's device. They're responding exactly as expected, Jun-ho reported, watching the enemy's perfect formations try to adapt to the chaos around them. Their hive mind is fully engaged in trying to predict our movements. Now, Min Seo said quietly, activating the neural disruptor. The device pulsed, sending waves of human neural patterns through space. The effect on the Xeraxian fleet was immediate and dramatic. Ships began breaking formation as their crews experienced individual thoughts for the first time in their species' history. They're feeling emotion, Min Seo reported, monitoring the readings. Fear, confusion, but also curiosity. Some are embracing the change. The battle became something unprecedented. Some Xeraxian ships continued fighting in their traditional patterns, while others began moving erratically, mimicking the chaos of human tactics. The hive mind was fragmenting, but not destroying itself. Admiral Kim watched with a mixture of satisfaction and sympathy as the mighty Xeraxian fleet struggled with its new reality. Send the message, he ordered. Across all frequencies in every language known to the Coalition, their ultimatum was broadcast. Choose to evolve. Choose to think independently. Choose to join us as individuals rather than parts of a collective that knows only conquest. The response came slowly, fragmented, as individual Xeraxians began making their own choices for the first time. Some ships surrendered immediately. Others fought on with desperate fury, but most simply stopped, their crews overwhelmed by their first experience of individual consciousness. The homeworld's defenses are powering down, Jun-ho reported. They're choosing change over extinction. Min Seo watched her readings with tears in her eyes. The neural patterns are stabilizing. They're finding a balance between their collective nature and individual thought. They're evolving. Over the next few hours, the greatest empire the galaxy had ever known transformed. The neural disruptor continued its work, helping the Xeraxians adapt to their new existence. Ships began moving in new patterns, not with human chaos, but with a new kind of order that allowed for individual variation. Admiral Kim stood on the bridge of his flagship, remembering the massacre he'd survived years ago. Sometimes, he said to no one in particular, victory means helping your enemy become something better. As coalition forces landed on the Ziraxian homeworld, they found a civilization in peaceful transformation. The perfect geometric patterns of their cities began to show signs of individual expression. Art appeared for the first time in their history. Music, chaotic and beautiful, echoed through streets that had known only silence. "They're learning to be individuals," Min Seo said, walking through a Ziraxian city with Junho and Kim. "But they're keeping the best parts of their collective nature. They're becoming something entirely new." The war ended not with destruction, but with evolution. The Ziraxians, who had conquered countless worlds through perfect unity, learned to value the diversity they had once sought to eliminate. Their worlds, once monuments to order, became places where logic and emotion could coexist. Admiral Kim stood in the same room where he had first met the Ziraxians, now transformed into a chamber of the new Galactic Council. Representatives from every species, including newly individualized Ziraxians, gathered to build a future together. "Our greatest weakness became our greatest strength," he said during the first council meeting. "And in sharing that strength, we found not victory over an enemy, but growth for all." The galaxy had changed forever. Humanity, once seen as chaotic and unpredictable, was now recognized as wise in their embrace of both logic and emotion. The Ziraxians, once feared as perfect conquerors, became known as an example of how any species could choose to evolve. And in the end, the greatest victory wasn't the defeat of an enemy, but the birth of a new way of existing, one that valued both the order of the hive mind and the beautiful chaos of individual thought.